So ladies and gentlemen, as you can see right here, look at this. Hi everyone, the OU Tiering Council will be testing the Dynamax and Gigantamax mechanic. Oh my god. You know what though, at the same time, I am absolutely shocked that they are willing to suspect test an entire mechanic, okay? Mind you, this is the same mechanic that replaced the likes of Mega Evolutions and Z-Moves, okay? This mechanic, Dynamax and Gigantamax, is what sets Generation 8 apart. And Smogon is suspect testing this shit? Like, what? Are you absolutely kidding me? Now, ladies and gentlemen, for all intents and purposes, I did do a video on this particular subject a few days ago. So if you guys are interested in hearing out my points in regards to the thought of suspect testing Dynamax, then do exactly that. You know, watch the video if you guys are interested in hearing out that portion. But now, ladies and gentlemen, the sleeves are going to get rolled up because we're about to get into this shit because I am like, what the fuck? Seriously? Seriously, Smogon? Like, what the hell? Okay, well, let's go ahead and let's dive into this, shall we? Suspect reasoning. The Dynamax mechanic is the latest gimmick Game Freak has created, sharing similar traits to Mega Evolutions and Z-Moves from the previous two generations. However, Dynamaxing is an entirely different beast. Should a Pokemon Dynamax, its current HP doubles for 3 turns, granting any Pokemon with absurd bulk temporarily. Pokemon with 4 times weaknesses can shrug off attacks with ease now due to the buff in their HP. But there's more to Dynamaxing than just the HP buff. Dynamaxing shares similar traits to Z-Moves, but it ups the ante. Dynamaxing grants Pokemon max moves, which cap at 150 base power, while also having additional side effects, but also last for 3 turns. Similarly to Z-Moves, you can activate them when you please, and its immediate effects last for 3 turns, while the side effects of its max moves can linger beyond that. Just from the descriptions, the buffs are significantly better than what Mega Evolutions and Z-Moves. Okay, hold the phone. Stop right there, okay? Constable Crasher is pulling you off the side of the road here because I feel like I need to test your logic here in this situation. You want to say that Pokemon with 4 times weaknesses can shrug off super effective attacks? Are you for real? Okay, here's the thing, alright? We're not going to dispute the fact that Dynamaxing does double the user's HP. There's no denying that, okay? And there are some Pokemon that have a gargantuan amount of HP that could very easily be even more tankier once Dynamax takes effect, okay? But here's the thing, okay, is that weaknesses still apply, and it's just the HP that gets buffed. It's not the attacks, it's not the defenses, it's not the speed, okay? And also, I need to drive this point home right from the get-go, is that Dynamaxing is for everyone, okay? Both you and your opponent can Dynamax whatever Pokemon you want at any time. I mean, yeah, sure, if you're facing off against someone who is Dynamaxed and that Pokemon is a very big threat, then yeah, you might have to sacrifice a Pokemon or two and might even sacrifice your own Dynamax just to hold off that Pokemon. But you see, here's the thing, is that it goes back to what I said before, is that Dynamax is for everyone. It works both ways, and here's the thing, okay, is that sometimes you win some and sometimes you lose some, alright? But the fact is that now that we have ourselves this on the table officially, and should Dynamax and Gigantamax be, in fact, banned, then this right here is, in my opinion, going to make battles in the Gen 8 Pokemon metagame a lot less fun, in my opinion. In addition to the buffs given, any Pokemon can Dynamax, and it does not require an item to utilize. Dynamaxing Pokemon have absurd buffs, and the players have the absolute luxury to use them whenever they so please. This allows for an abundance of randomness and a lack of skillful gameplay. Emphasis on the skillful. Okay. While it isn't a straight-up guessing game, the sheer randomness and luxury that Dynamaxing presents to a player is quite absurd. Beyond these simple buffs, there are a multitude of other immunities that Dynamax Pokemon have access to. This list includes immunity to being flinched, being phased out, such as with likes of Roar and Dragon Tail, fainting to Destiny Bond, all weight-related moves such as Heavy Slam, Low Kick, etc., the effects of Encore, the effects of Disable, and the move locked from choice items. Boosts from the items disappear while Dynamax. I just absolutely love the fact that they decided to throw in their pool of complaints about this that it is going to add randomness and a lack of skill. Okay, so do you want everything to be prediction-based and absolutely bare-bones, bland, and stale, just like the Gen 7 metagame was? I mean, if we're going to be going back to how stale the Gen 7 metagame is, then here's the thing, okay? Is that Gen 8, in my opinion, is probably going to get pretty stale pretty quickly, so much so to the point, in my opinion, that people are going to be begging and pleading to the almighty Arceus for Gen 9 to be a thing already, if this right here is in fact to fall through and get banned. And you know what? I'm most likely going to be repeating myself a fair bit here from this point forward here in this video, like a broken record. Dynamaxing works both ways, okay? It works for you, and it works for the opponent. And again, you win some and you lose some. And there's more to it, okay? First off, you can't just Dynamax any of your Pokemon willy-nilly just because, right? You need to have some form of knowledge behind how Dynamax works and what Pokemon can benefit best from the likes of Dynamaxing. Now, there's also the instance, which more often than not probably will be happening, is the fact that you are going to be facing off against an opponent that is a big-time threat to your team, and if you have to face off against a Dynamax Pokemon, then yeah, you might have to throw your original strategy out the window, sacrifice one of your Pokemon and Dynamax them, so that way they could be a defensive use when it comes to Dynamaxing, so that way you're not going to get completely stomped out by the opposing Pokemon that is Dynamaxing, and you know what? It just goes back to the whole thing of you win some and you lose some, right? You could build one of the best and most strategic teams ever. Say you have a team that is built around Gyarados, okay? Gyarados is by far like one of the best abusers of Dynamaxing, okay? Say if you build a team that is around Gyarados, okay? And you're facing off against your opponent, and say if something happens in the battle where, you know, they go and they Dynamax their Pokemon, and you look at your team and you're like, oh shit, like this Pokemon could actually stomp out my entire team. I gotta do something quick. Well, I don't want to sacrifice Dynamax because that is strictly for Gyarados, but I might have to click on Dynamax and Dynamax my Toxapex or something like that in order to have some way of holding off from being completely stomped out by the Dynamax opponent's Pokemon. I mean, that's just my take on it, you know? So, you can't just say that it's going to be a lack of skillful play, because the thing is, right, is that unless you know how Dynamax really and truly works, and you know what Pokemon go best with the Dynamax phenomenon, then there's actually quite a bit of knowledge required in order for you to properly Dynamax said Pokemon in competitive battles. And to complain about there being an abundance of randomness, I mean, come on, it's like, do you want battles to be completely stale and not fun and be all about prediction-based and stuff like that? I mean, you gotta have a little bit of chaos thrown in there to spice up the battles. You gotta have a little bit of chaos in there in order for battles to actually be like, you know, out of the box, balls to the walls kind of exciting, you know? And the thing is that I'm sure that's what myself and a lot of the Smogon player base would in fact appreciate in battles from time to time. But again, that's just me. Within the metagame that we've had for a little over 2 weeks, Dynamax Pokemon have completely ruled the metagame. It's entirely evident to anyone who has played Generation 8 that the centralizing force is, without question, the Dynamax mechanic. A multitude of Pokemon have rose from lower levels of viability to rule the metagame. Due to the fact any Pokemon can Dynamax, there are an extremely high amount of Pokemon which frequently utilize it. The nature of Dynamax prevents there from being a single or even a handful of abusers that break the metagame and warrants a suspect test. There are a few abusers that can be pointed out as the most prominent, but it's an exaggeration to label them as such because there are a multitude of Pokemon that frequently abuse it. Any Pokemon could Dynamax at any given time. Setup sweepers can Dynamax to increase their powers, bulk, and potentially get even a stat boost. Breakers can Dynamax to make their attack stronger or simply tank an attack that would have otherwise knocked them out. Bulkier Pokemon can Dynamax to withstand an attack and net a surprise kill. Throughout the first few weeks of the generation, nearly every Pokemon used has Dynamaxed for one reason or another. Okay, so if we are going to now be making the argument about centralization, then let's take a trip back to previous generations. Let's take a look back at the likes of Generation 7, shall we? So, from my personal experience when it came to battles in the Generation 7 OU metagame, as an example, we would see the same cookie-cutter Pokemon / cookie-cutter teams being utilized in competitive play. Most notably would be the likes of the Island Guardians, Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele, Tapu Fini, Tapu Bulu, Landorus, Tyrion. Landorus Tyrion is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the most used Pokemon historically in Pokemon battles. How about Magearna, How about the likes of Toxapex, there are a lot of Pokemon that were centralizing because of how much they were being used, and centralized in the fact that they were simply outclassing other Pokemon as well. So take Landorus for an example, Although Landorus isn't exactly the most busted Pokemon, it was without a shadow of a doubt one of the most used and splashable Pokemon that there is, okay? So say, for example, if it got banned to the Ubers tier because of how much it was being used and how it was just simply limiting creative team building and all that stuff, we would see a sudden rise in other Pokemon that were similar to the likes of Landorus, such as, for example, you would have Toxic Orb, Poison Heal, Gliscor actually rise back up to the rankings as being the superior bulky ground-type Pokemon. Or say, for example, if Toxapex got banned to Ubers because of how centralizing it was based on its usage, then we could have other bulky water-type Pokemon start to rise up in the ranks and eventually fill Toxapex's shoes. As an example, maybe put something like Tentacruel in its place, because not only is it a semi-decent bulky water-type Pokemon, but it also has access to some pretty cool utility, such as the likes of Rapid Spin, such as the likes of Toxic Spikes, and just to name a few, you could also factor in Jellicent as another example of a good bulky water-type Pokemon, or maybe something like Vaporeon or Gastrodon even, And if I can also illustrate a further example of this, Mega Metagross ended up getting banned last generation, despite the fact that it wasn't exactly the most highly used Pokemon. Sure, it was very good in what it did, but it wasn't insanely broken, okay? But the thing is that it got suspect tested and it got banned. And the thing is that it wasn't the most used Pokemon. But anyways, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, so let's go ahead and let's get back into reading this article here. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so now we actually have ourselves some examples listed of Pokemon that would absolutely be busted during the likes of Dynamax, or at the very, very least, be viable when it comes to running Dynamaxing. So, as an example, we have ourselves Gyarados here. Now, it's common knowledge that Gyarados is historically one of the best Pokemon in competitive play, and given how the Dynamax mechanics work, and especially the kind of move pool that Gyarados has, as well as its stats and ability as well, Gyarados can very easily abuse the Dynamax features. So the thing is that I am fully aware of the fact that there are Pokemon out there that can very easily break the Dynamax feature. So, with that said, we also have ourselves Hawlucha as well as another example that we had highlighted / talked about in a previous video. We also have ourselves Corviknight here due to its incredible bulk. It's a surprising behemoth when Dynamax. It becomes near impossible to take out in one hit, even should you also Dynamax due to its incredible natural bulk coupled with doubling its HP. The speed boost guaranteed by Max Airstream also gives Corviknight a lot more tools to sweep. We also have ourselves Galarian Darmanitan that gets a mention right here. We have Hydreigon, we have Togekiss, and we also have ourselves other Pokemon that could utilize the likes of Dynamax after, of course, they set up once or twice, such as likes of Kommo-o, Tyranitar, Dragapult, bulky Calm Mind Pokemon such as Reuniclus and Hatterene, the Rotom forms, and you also have it being used for defensive options. There are a vast amount of scenarios where Dynamaxing your Pokemon to net a surprise kill or to survive a specific encounter can be utilized. Reactionary Dynamax is extremely potent, even if the Dynamax Pokemon isn't a flashy setup sweeper. A multitude of very viable other options exist, but listing all of them fill up the remainder of this post. Okay, so this right here is where I am also going to be bringing up a point that I had brought up in my previous video in regards to Smogon and Suspect Testing Dynamaxing, is why not just enforce complex bans? I mean, here's the thing, alright, is I know Smogon doesn't like doing that and all that stuff, but here's the thing, okay, is if you outright ban an entire game feature, an entire battle mechanic in the likes of Dynamax and Gigantamaxing, that's not going to sit well with a lot of the community, in my opinion, right? And the thing is that if we invoke the likes of complex bans, then we can take those said threats that would be able to abuse Dynamaxing and just simply ban them from having the ability to Dynamax, that right there would be a very, very fair and solid compromise. And with this compromise right here, it's not going to completely kill and make the Gen 8 metagame boring and unfun, because we're still going to be able to, for the most part anyways, have access to Gigantamax and Dynamax, which is what sets Generation 8 apart from all of the other generations, but now we don't have to worry about those specific Pokemon that can outright abuse Dynamax and make them so they are completely unbeatable or next to unbeatable. We don't have to worry about that anymore in battles. Like, if we're worried about those Pokemon stomping our faces into the ground and all that stuff, well, just ban them from Dynamaxing and there you go, It would be a very, very, very fair and balanced compromise, if you ask me. Okay, so now let's move on to the next paragraph here. However, with all of this in mind, Dynamax Pokemon are not by any means an auto-win button. Ditto has seen astronomical usage to help counteract all of the potential setup sweepers and is a very efficient option for the majority of them. You can also counteract Dynamaxing by either baiting a Dynamax and switching to a resist or immunity, or you can Dynamax yourself to tank an attack and fire back. Should you pull off the latter, your opponent won't be able to Dynamax anymore, and you still came out of the exchange successfully. Pokemon that have Dynamax are also not unkillable or unwallable. Even with the incredible increase in bulk, Pokemon can still be hit by super effective attacks for massive chunks of their health before they can get going. They are also far from unwallable. Setup sweepers in particular can be counteracted by bulky walls, bulky setup Pokemon, or unaware Pokemon. So there you go. My point's exactly as to why the whole thing involving Dynamaxing should not be thrown into the trash, but as a fair compromise, those said Pokemon that are extremely abusable under the Dynamax condition should in fact have a complex ban, so that way those Pokemon aren't banned, but they are banned from utilizing the Dynamax feature. And there's also the other points that were made as well that were similar to mine, how you can Dynamax to tank a hit and also fire back a very powerful hit of your own, but also there are other factors involved when it comes to playing around with Dynamax, period, okay? It's not just a simple case of you clicking Dynamaxing and winning the game. It's, as I said before, there is a lot of skill and knowledge involved in order for you to truly understand what Dynamax involves and how it works. And they even said themselves that no Pokemon, even when Dynamaxed, is unkillable or unwallable because there are other factors involved. There are resistances, there are immunities, and also just because you have double HP doesn't make you, like, immune from taking severe damage, if not being one-shotted, you know? As an example, Gyarados, despite being one of the most threatening Dynamax Pokemon, is still water and flying. It still has that 4 times weakness to electric moves, so it will most likely get one-shotted if it was to have a Thunderbolt thrown at it from a special attacker of an electric type. Another aspect to consider is the fact that this is this generation's gimmick. Obviously, we play a vastly different game than Nintendo envisions, but to what degree should we deviate from it? Should we accept what Nintendo has created and do what we can to play with it, rather than ban the core mechanic of this generation? We do not wish to argue for this because this will come down to a matter of opinion, but please keep in mind voting ban removes the central part of the generation. So it seems to me that they have actually acknowledged the fact that, you know, this is the new generation's gimmick, and this is Nintendo's way of saying, hey, this right here is what we want for the competitive scene, as well as just for the gameplay in general when it comes to Generation 8. Yeah, they scrapped Mega Evolutions, yeah, they scrapped Z-moves, but they replaced it with the Dynamax/Gigantamax feature for any and everyone to enjoy when it comes to their gameplay experience. And also, Pokemon has, no pun intended, evolved over the years, so the thing is that we as a battling community should learn to evolve and adapt to these new changes instead of consistently, well, I shouldn't say consistently, but more often than not, going into this state of, oh my god, you know, we gotta play safe, everything's gotta be so, you know, non-luck based and, you know, all about prediction and it's unfun and it's all this and all that. No. See, here's the thing, okay, is that with all of what has taken place and with all of what has evolved over the years when it came to the competitive scene, I really and truly think that us being able to adapt to these changes, whether they be big or small, rather than trying to make things as, we'll say, null and void as possible when it comes to these new changes. You know, we can't just invalidate and ignore the fact that Dynamaxing is the new feature of this generation. So don't you think that we should learn to adapt to that new feature and try our best to make it work for us? I mean, the thing is that yes, based on research and experiences from a multitude of battlers, there are Pokemon that, objectively speaking, become even more broken when they're Dynamaxed, such as, again, as an example, Gyarados is very much broken. Is it unbeatable? Is it unkillable? No, it's not. But the thing is that it's, as I've said before, if we are going to invoke any form of structure or bans at all, then I definitely think that we need to take into consideration the usage of complex bans, where instead of banning that Pokemon outright or banning the feature outright, you should ban that said Pokemon from having access to Dynamaxing. That right there would, in my opinion, be, you know, the most fair compromise choice out of all of the other options to go with in this situation. And if I'm going to be blunt, yes, you should accept what Nintendo has created and try your best to work with it. Now, am I saying that it should be completely left alone and, you know, have everything be as unbalanced as you claim it to be? No. That's why I said, how about enforce complex bans and only allow for Pokemon that are not outright broken to Dynamax, whereas Pokemon like Gyarados and Hawlucha, as an example, that are objectively broken or at bare minimum very, very good, complex ban them from having access to Dynamaxing as well. And also, if I can make this argument as well, let's take a look at Gigantamaxing, okay? The thing is that Gigantamaxing is only exclusive to, like, a handful of Pokemon, such as the likes of Centiskorch, such as the likes of Snorlax, such as the likes of Grimmsnarl, you know? I'm thinking that, you know, those Pokemon right there, even within their Gigantamax forms, aren't all that out there when it comes to them being overly good or even broken in competitive play. And also, there are Pokemon that when they're in their Gmax forms aren't actually as good as opposed to them being in their Dynamax forms, you know? As a perfect example, we have Corviknight here, you know? They don't mention anything about Gigantamax Corviknight. No, they mention Dynamax Corviknight here, and that's because Dynamax Corviknight is actually better than Gigantamax Corviknight, and that's because of the fact that it would have access to Airstream, which is the move that boosts its speed up by one stage, whereas opposed if you are Gigantamax Corviknight, then your flying type Gmax move doesn't boost your stats. I think all it does is it's essentially an attack with a defog built into it. That's it. So honestly, I really don't think that Gigantamax is even worth considering banning or let alone suspect testing. If I'm going to be completely honest here, we should focus more on Dynamaxing. If we're going to focus on anything suspect test worthy at all, then we should focus on Dynamaxing and focus on taking a look at the Pokemon that will objectively be more broken and maybe even break the metagame when Dynamax is used, and have their access to Dynamax essentially removed or complex banned, so that way all of us get a fair compromise and we don't have to sit here and twiddle our thumbs and wish for Generation 9 to come about, where we have a brand new game mechanic then as well, in the event that Dynamax as a whole would in fact get banned from Smogon competitive play. And we actually have ourselves the page right here of the list of Gmax moves from the respective Gigantamax Pokemon. As an example, we've got Gmax Wildfire. That is a fire type attack that Gigantamax Charizard uses. This move continues to deal damage to opponents for 4 turns. So its side effect is essentially Fire Spin, and that's it. But I actually want to point out Corviknight's Gmax move. So we got Gmax Wind Rage here, a flying type attack that Gigantamax Corviknight uses. This move removes the effects of moves like Light Screen and Reflect. So, as I said before, it's essentially like a defog here. And we also have ourselves, let's see another good example here. Let's take a look at Gmax Stun Shock, an electric type attack that Gigantamax Toxtricity uses. This move poisons or paralyzes the opponents. So, as you can see right here, there is a rather limited move pool when it comes to Gigantamax moves in the first place, and it just shows how limited the Gigantamax Pokemon move pool is in comparison to, say, Dynamax Pokemon, where pretty much every Pokemon, with the exception of legendaries, have access to the Dynamax feature. And the thing is also, is that the effects of these Gmax moves are significantly less than, say, Dynamax moves, because Dynamax moves essentially allow for you to either boost your stats, lower your opponent's stats, set up a terrain, or set up weather. And those right there, in my opinion, are vastly more superior when it comes to max moves in the first place, when you compare them side by side to Gmax moves, where they have their own signature gimmicky side effect that can be somewhat useful, but not as useful and not as broken, of course, as regular D-Max moves. Overall, the Dynamax mechanic is what has everyone been talking about, what everyone has been paying attention to, and this suspect test is what many have been waiting for. We, the council, believe this mechanic has many incredible aspects, and banning it may potentially lead to the betterment of the metagame. Despite it being the core mechanic of the generation, we wish to have a quality metagame where the better player wins. Should Dynamax hinder that, we believe it has no business in the tier. Okay, so you want to talk about quality metagame, okay? Well, here's the thing, is that I really don't consider it to be, you know, much quality in terms of, like, fun and excitement and stuff like that, when everything is just based on, oh, if I predict X, you know, maybe I can switch into Y, or maybe if, you know, he does A move, I can counter it with B move and stuff like that. There has to be some form of chaos involved, like, there has to be some form of randomness involved, if you will, to shake things up, to stir the pot, you know? That's what makes battles all the more exciting, in my opinion, and I think I can safely say that there may be other people that will agree with what I'm saying right here, but here's the thing, is that you know, I'm also a Smogon battler as well, because I also enjoy the fact that there are a lot of different tiers that are organized for competitive play. But the thing is that things are going to be a lot less exciting for myself and possibly a lot of other players if Dynamax, especially this early in the Gen 8 metagame, gets outright cut from competitive play. And it goes back to the notion, sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some, you know? And also, another thing that I said previously here in this video is that you don't just simply hit Dynamax and expect to win the game. There's a lot of skill and knowledge behind that decision to hit the Dynamax button. You gotta know what you are looking for when it comes to Dynamaxing, and you gotta know what to expect when it comes to your opponent's usage of Dynamaxing as well. And to say that, you know, banning it could potentially lead to the betterment of the metagame, I respectfully disagree, because the thing is that just because you ban something, that doesn't mean that it's going to just suddenly go away from the minds of the fellow battlers, because here's the thing, is that we're talking about a whole new game mechanic. The same mechanic that replaced Mega Evolutions and Z-moves, okay? You know, I'm sure there's a lot of players that are going to want to still have some access and some usage when it comes to the Dynamax phenomenon. And as I said before, you know, if we're going to enforce anything at all about controlling Dynamaxing, rather than just outright banning it, then why don't we do complex bans, you know? And also, if I say this, if we don't ban it at all, or if there is the option to not ban it at all, here's my thing, okay, is that the Pokemon and Nintendo company are doing all of this for a reason, okay? Like, they themselves said that they were doing all this for better battle balance. That's not just cutting out things like the national decks. That's not just cutting out things like Mega Evolutions and Z-moves and stuff like that. They put Dynamax in there for a reason, right? And the thing is that it's not outright broken. Is it very, very good? You're damn right it's very, very good. And it does objectively make Pokemon like Gyarados and Hawlucha very, very big-time threats. But are they unkillable? No. Are they unwallable? No. You know, and you even said that yourself in, you know, a previous paragraph here. So, I mean, that right there, just there you go. It's like you essentially agree with the fact that there are good things and there are limited things about Dynamaxing as well. Now, mind you, if it was something that was, like, say, you know, the duration of Mega Evolution, then we can talk, okay? Then we can talk. Then perhaps we'd have to invoke a lot more complex bans or a lot more restrictions when it comes to the use of Dynamaxing. But it only lasts 3 turns. 3 turns, and that's it. So really and truly, if you want to talk about the betterment of the metagame, then I would just say adapt. You know, in all honesty, it's time to evolve as battlers, much like how Pokemon and the core mechanics have evolved over the years. We ourselves should not ignore that and shelter ourselves into a safe space type of metagame, and we should actually learn to adapt to these changes and make the most out of it. You know, that's what would make the metagame overall a lot more fun, in my opinion. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it here for this video. I want to apologize for the length of this video. It went on a lot longer than I thought, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, if you did enjoy the video, then feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content from your boy on Crasher Talks and more. And also, comment down below, because I would love to hear from you guys regarding this matter, you know? I want to hear what you guys have to say, whether you guys are pro-ban or no-ban, you know? I'm really interested in hearing out what you guys have to say about this. So thank you guys so very much for watching. Have yourself a wonderful day or night, depending on your time zone, and I'll see you guys in the next one.